Well, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Tanner Machado, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Michelle Garcia.
Hello, everyone.
And we're sitting inside of this wonderful, absolutely wonderful podcast booth that's a part of the Mexican American Studies Institute that we have here at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. And this podcast, the basis of this podcast is going to be about mentoring students that are wanting to become veterinarians. So with Dr. Garcia and myself, also along with Dr. Consuelo Donato, Dr. Randy Stanko, and Dr. Jason Apple, we applied for a grant with the United States Department of Agriculture. Particularly, it was the Higher Education Multicultural Scholars Program, and we got funded. And so our program, what we call is MSPEAL, so that is Multicultural Scholars Pre-Veterinarian Experiential Agricultural Learning is what our program is. And so one of the things that we did for this program was at the end of the last semester, we sent out a survey to all of the students that are currently pursuing an animal science degree wanting to become veterinarians. And we said, if you could ask a current veterinarian student any question, like any question.
From here.
What would it be?
Yeah.
And so we collected that survey and we got a long list. We actually got about 3 pages here of questions from current TAMUC students that are wanting to become veterinarians. What would they ask? And so what we're doing today, then, this is part of the podcast. We have on the phone right now a student that is currently attending College of Veterinary Medicine in College Station, and he is an alumni of TAMUC. So he graduated here in animal science. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest, the main person of this podcast, and that's going to be Gabe Platas. So Gabe, when we get started on this, could you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Gabe Platas. I am a second-year veterinary student at the School of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences here at Texas A&M University-Kingsville. I am from
College
Station. Yeah, College Station. I'm from Fremont, Texas, so I'm very close to TAMUC, and I ended up doing my high school there at San Agustín Academy across the street from A&M Kingsville, and I ended up doing my Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture, Animal Science, the pre-vet majors there at TAMUC. So my undergrad is there, and now I'm over here at College Station.
And I wanted to put a little plug in there, too. So Gabe was actually a McNair scholar here at Kingsville. That program is really wonderful opportunity for students to sort of expand and get to a little bit deeper in science. And so he was in my lab, and I just, really enjoyed having him a part of that program and me participating in it. So.
Absolutely. There are opportunities across Kingsville at our university other than just the MSPEAL program for our students to participate to boost their resume.
Yeah.
That's our mentoring program. Come talk to us. We'll help you out with that.
Yeah.
So Gabe, you said, you're a second year student up at College Station. One of the questions that was asked, so we can start rolling through some of these questions. One of the questions that was asked is, what age were you when you began vet school?
Right. And so whenever I started I kind of did like an acceleration on my vet school career and my vet school pathway. I applied when I was 21. I had already received my bachelor's degree. So throughout the application process, I was 21. I started the program when I was 21, and then about like a month in, I was 22. With that being said, I don't think that age is really a matter. It's just more like how you want to kind of put things together. For me, I have my own obstacles being 22, one of them being I don't have a lot of experience with some of the individuals who are there. For those, for example, multiple applicants who have been going to the application trying to get into vet school have experience 3-5+ years of being in the veterinary industry. And there's things that they know that I don't know because I'm going based off textbook knowledge and things that I'm learning in school versus my own personal experiences. So age is just one of those subjective things that I don't think would be like a factor on anything like that. Mm-hmm. We have a student who went to chiropractor school and then ended up coming to vet school. The AVMA Council on Education, one of their feedbacks with us was when we were getting accredited was we are very diverse in our age population. So we have individuals who are starting their coursework with the vet school about mid-20s, and then we can see individuals up in their 40s and 50s.
Oh,
so
wow.
There's really no difference.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Absolutely. There's, and also always a plug, you're never too old to go back to school.
I guess not, especially school that hard.
Without a doubt.
I don't know if I'd want to go that hard, but that's awesome. So they accept students that are more experienced at life and have a professional career elsewhere. So there still is opportunity. It doesn't have to be right out of undergrad. So that's good.
I like cooking, so they're more seasoned.
Yes, seasoned. Yes.
So one of our other questions that we have here is, what did you feel were your biggest strengths and weaknesses going into vet school?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go it's not going to be more of my strengths and weaknesses. It's more of my personal things. But one of my strengths that I felt is I had a strong friend and support group whenever I was coming into vet school. So a lot of them were very supportive on my decisions. I had a partner who was willing to move up here with me. So I had them going into vet school, starting off strong as the first year with individuals who wanted to support me, who were going to be there with me the entire time, whether I had really good days, some really bad days, and my partner was there to see all of it too. So I had somebody there with me, going along with me, and not really have to worry about not being alone for parts of it. And so I think that was a great strength for me, because a lot of the things that potentially could have been detrimental in my academic career were a little bit eased off with my partner. And I was excited to start my dream degree. So having the motivation and wanting to pursue this degree, knowing that it's a bit difficult, kind of motivated me to continue going into the vet school route. I would say a weakness for me was that because I came from Tamuk, I wasn't really in the culture of A&M, and I didn't really know anyone here until vet school started. That's where I met a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues who are now probably some of my, what I can call best friends, but I didn't really know anybody coming in. And so trying to acclimate to the culture of A&M, to the culture of the two cities where it's Bryan and College Station, going from a small town to a bigger city was a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, it was, I think now we've been able to figure out the do's and don'ts of what to do.
I don't mean to interrupt, but, I kind of just want to say about that, that whole concept of culture, we sometimes forget about that. I bounced around for my degrees across the United States for working until I got my PhD. And there's no doubt you have to understand, you get embraced with the culture that is there, and you have to be open-minded to the culture where you start going to a new place.
Yeah, and I think that, I grew up in a military family, and so, I moved around a lot, and I really embraced every time we got to move. After about 2 years, I was like, where are we going next, but most, students don't have that opportunity, and it is a shock, and kind of following up on that, Gabe, I was kind of curious too, I found it really interesting that you started talking as a strength was your support network, and we have a very large Hispanic population down here where family, is a very important part of these students' life. Weekend activities, even during the week, they're close enough to go home if they need to. And, College Station, that's not necessarily something that they can do. The hard curriculum that you have doesn't allow it either. So, what do you think are some mechanisms, methods that some of these students that do have that Hispanic cultural background, get that kind of support, or, what would you recommend to them so that they can handle being that far away from home? It's a shock to the system and the family. I think the family struggles with that too.
Yeah, I'm a very family-oriented individual. I am big on being with my family, doing a lot of my things with them, and kind of just being there. But because they are all in South Texas, for specifically Fremont, Texas, from here to there, it's a 5-hour drive. If you live in the RGV area, it's going to be a lot longer than that, at least an hour. And so a weekend trip is not always feasible. And I don't like the weekend trips because I'm driving that Friday. I'm only there Saturday all day. And then I'm driving back up Sunday to get ready for an exam. So within that time, you kind of have to sacrifice what you're going to be doing. And it's a little bit difficult. But whenever I kind of understood that I was going to need a big support group, there's a couple of things that I kind of worked around. And so one of them is being very like service forward with my family, helping them where I can. Financials is probably not one of the best ways I can do that right now, just because I'm paying for vet school. But service is one of those big deals, and because they're so far, it's kind of hard. So in order to make myself happy in that service standpoint, I went ahead and like looked at organizations that were big on services. Right now, Texas A&M and the vet school are my community. So, and they're what's becoming my family. So I'm helping my support system by adding them into my group of my family sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you created community up there.
Right.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Very good
It
idea.
also helped with like my partner. We lived together and he was willing to come up here. That had its own challenges in that he had to find a new job here, and jobs are very hard to come by up here in College Station, just because there's the longevity aspect that individuals like to stay here for a very long period of time in terms of employment. And so we were able to figure that out. And my personal life with him was all over the place my first semester. It's just crazy. So like trying to find that balance was great. My grades, I'm sorry, like I'm going on a tangent, but right now I talk to my parents every other day in school, every day in summer, just to kind of go with them and build that support system. One of the things that I kind of want to recommend is to hold true to the promises of staying in touch. I know whenever you're graduating or you're seeing some individuals that you haven't seen in a while, you're like, oh yeah, we'll stay in touch. Like, I promise I'll talk to you. Keep those promises, because those are individuals who are willing to stay in contact with you and talk to you throughout the time you're here in vet school. I text everybody as much as I can throughout the day. A phone call isn't very feasible when you're in labs and stuff, but a text here and there, trying to keep them within your open lines of communication is very workable. And that's kind of how I work to make sure that my family connection is still there. And then that aspect of building community here at A&M.
Absolutely, and I commend you on that, because one thing about that is someone has to take the initiative to keep that ball rolling with communication, and so it is a very valuable lesson. I'm glad that you're doing that, Gabe, and I'm glad that you brought that up.
And I do want to put a plug in here. Gabe even keeps in touch with me. I'll get these messages, these text messages, and I love hearing, how they're doing, because these are real experiences. And I do share that, with these other pre-vet kids that come up and ask questions. I'll be like, well, I just talked to so-and-so, in College Station. So, and we do want you to succeed, and we're here to support you.
Absolutely. So going on a couple more questions. We're getting about a little over halfway through our podcast here. So this one can be short if you want, or as long as you want it to be. So what would you say that the experience of the application process was harder than the experience of going through the 2 years that you've been in vet school, or is vet school harder than the application process? Because there's a lot to the application process.
Yeah, so I will agree and say that the application is like tedious, it's difficult, it takes a lot of time, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's harder than the curriculum. And I can see why it looks a little bit more difficult on the application side, just because for Texas residents or anyone who applies to Texas schools, you're kind of at a disadvantage, since Texas veterinary schools use a separate application portal than like other out-of-state schools. So rather than just doing one application, you are inevitably doing two, asking the same thing and making sure that they both look perfectly to your ideas of what a good application should look like. And that's also adding to the point where the personal statements might not be the same. So you are doing two applications within the application period, which I can see it being an issue of it being difficult. But the program, the vet school, is AVMA accredited. And so because it's accredited, it has to be challenging. I mean, not everyone should be able to do it. And in that sense, there should be some sort of specialized training to become a veterinarian. And it's shown. I mean, we have a 93% pass rate for first-time takers. So there's still individuals in the program that don't pass it the first time. So it needs to be difficult. It's always difficult. And the application is just that first step into understanding this is just the start. Get ready for like your next 4 years. Yeah,
I definitely want the veterinarian that keeps my animals alive, not ones that are on the other side. So I hope they study and know what they're doing on that. So with that kind of saying, what do you feel was the most important aspect of your vet school application that got you accepted?
It's probably a broad spectrum answer, and it's probably not one that people want to hear, but you need to be an all-around candidate. Now, because it is so competitive, they don't really focus on academics. It's probably more of like a check mark saying like, oh, your grades are good. That's awesome. But we want to see what else you can bring to the table. What makes you different from everybody else? And so probably what I would say got me pretty well is that I had at least one item in each of the sections that I was required. So if it was honors courses or if it was extracurricular activities or leadership, at least every section had something for me to put in there other than just academics. That way I was well-rounded and they could see that I was an individual who could succeed as an individual and not just merely a student. You know, the vet industry is changing crazy. So textbook learning isn't going to work anymore. So they want to see what experiences are going to help you in the long run.
Excellent. No, I agree that being well-rounded goes a long ways. Goes a long ways.
I've been using the term diversify.
That's
your
absolutely
application.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we have a few more minutes left in the podcast. One of the questions like during vet school here. So, how does class grading work when it comes to GPA and passing your classes? GPA and A's.
Do they matter? Do they matter as much as they did as undergrad? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, just plain and simple. No, once you're in vet school, that is the goal, is to get into vet school. So grades don't matter at this point. You can get C's your entire program, and you will still become a veterinarian. You still have to pass the NAVLE, but you are still going to be a veterinarian no matter what your grades look like. You are allowed 3 Ds and 1 F, you're allowed 3 Ds, or you can get 1 F and 2 Ds, and you can still stay within the program. So grades don't really matter anymore. It's more of finish the program. We want to see you succeed.
Yeah, getting an A is kind of a luxury. Let's just pass these classes and stay in the program.
Without a doubt, because ultimately, all vet schools are preparing you for the boards, right? That's how you actually become a veterinarian, right? So
pass the end exam.
Yeah. So you can get a D in that class. Wait, no, I take that back. You need to have C's, right?
Well, you can get a D. You just can't get 3 Ds or 2 Ds and an F.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then
we have the saying C's get careers is really amplified here at the vet school.
Yeah. And I do want to I did have a student that had a rough year that I wrote a character letter for him. And there is an appeal process. And sometimes, you come back in if it's a special case, but those vet schools, they mean business. I mean, good God. I was heartbroken, actually. So, and in this case, it was successful. So the appeal worked, and the student gets to stay on the program.
Well, kind of talking about appeals, right? So I think that kind of lends into another question that we had from our students here is where and what did you find the ability to pass bad, either whether it's new or personal experiences, and still have the energy and motivation to move past it and keep moving forward without crashing emotionally, physically, intellectually? Basically, can you give an example of some things in your process of going into vet school that has been a challenge and what kept you from giving up?
Yeah, so I can kind of go like how the semester went. So at the very beginning, I was really big on wanting to balance my social, my academic, and my personal life. And so luckily, like I said, my partner decided to come and move with me to College Station. So it was very easy to balance my personal life. But that also meant sacrificing somewhere in my social or my academics. And so I decided that it would be my academics because while I have a good personal life and I have a good academic life, I also wanted to have a good social life. And so all three kind of correspond with one another. You're going to end up sacrificing one side for phenomenal and the other two. And so trying to find that balance was kind of hard the first semester. And we were able to do that. My grades were bad the first half of the semester, and I couldn't really understand why. And I was able to figure out I'm putting too much time in my social and my personal life. Let's try to figure out how to balance them all. And so that way I was good academically. My mental health was perfectly fine, or at least in a good sense where I could keep moving forward. And then socially where I could just talk to friends and just have a happy time without having to worry about vet school. And so moving forward was just making sure that I was balanced throughout the time, and that took a lot of self-reflection to make sure I was doing that. In the second semester, which would be the spring, it was just right before spring break, my grandmother passed away. And I found out right before my large animal anatomy exam. So I found out that Thursday, and I had an exam that Friday. And it was a little bit difficult to try to balance everything around just because I wasn't expecting that. But after knowing that I had a healthy support system, it was a little bit more easy for me to figure out and navigate where I wanted things to go. And so because I had a good relationship with my parents, they even called me to see what days I was available or what days worked well, so that way I would be able to make it to the funeral, so it wasn't like I was being left out. And so we were able to kind of discuss and see where it was beneficial for me as well, since I was probably the one who would be the most likely to miss out. And so it was just, it kind of worked out with balancing my life in all three aspects.
So it kind of sounds like, so balance is definitely a word, because there's going to be a lot of different situations. You know, you had one that worked out well where you had support from your partner, family, you know, you'd work something out, but there are some that don't bring their family with them, right? And so they still have to figure out how to balance the social and the academic. And I think flexibility, you know, maybe, and to be a little bit not so hard on yourself, to allow yourself some failure and go, okay, sit back, reflect. How do I adjust? You know, and I'm sorry, I didn't know about your grandma.
Yeah, I can definitely. You know, family members' deaths are definitely things that are a challenge, and you need a support group with that.
Yeah.
But to kind of help us also, some of the listeners understand a little bit when we talk about balance. Like and you say personal life, so like how many hours, like whether it's in a day or in a week, do you like dedicate for your personal well-being? Because obviously sometimes you have to be just 100% studying. So can you give us just a general idea?
Yeah, it's a very subjective question. And the vet school really allows a lot of the time for you to go and give yourself that personal space. For me, studying, I mean, the first year is the hardest year. You're there from 8 to 5, no matter what. And so you really have to study. The thing is, vet school is your full-time job, studying is your part-time job. So in there, we're trying to find personal space and personal balance. And so for me, I spend at least an hour every day in the morning and the afternoon before school and after school, just for myself to figure out what I want, what I'm being motivated, kind of like doing some affirmations, trying to figure out why am I here? Why do I still continue to do this? What are my benefits in the future? Why am I going to this now? And so that does tend to help. A lot of the things that I do are also throughout school. I go on hikes a lot whenever I feel a little frustrated with schoolwork. And if you have to miss class for something, it's completely fine because the lectures are recorded. So whether you miss class because you have an appointment or you just feel burned out, you can go ahead and miss it, come back later on that day. It will be in your Canvas, or what would be equivalent to like Blackboard. And so you can watch them later. It's not, you have to be there all the time. So make the time for you, whether it works for you, might not work for somebody else, just do what works for you.
That's nice to hear that the vet school is able to be flexible and figured out a mechanism, understanding that it's a pressure cooker up there because the curriculum is heavy. Yeah. You have usually, 21 to 23 hours like your first year, but the content is more like what? What would you compare that to?
Oh, I don't even know.
Like 10 classes, 12 classes? Yeah,
so Stanko's repro course, I will tell you, was in our physiology lecture was only 2 weeks. So his whole entire lecture was 2 weeks of the curriculum.
You mean the whole semester was 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was crazy.
So multiply Dr. Stanko's repro by what is it, like 6?
Is it 13 weeks that 7? You have in a semester?
Well, Gabe, we're about out of time, and I wish we could talk more. And we may set it up where we actually get more from you, more responses back from you. And I can't emphasize enough that we greatly appreciate that you actually also are giving back to other students that were in your place. And that's kind of our alarm for saying, hey, we got to cut off. And so once again, I want to say thank you, Gabe, for joining us. And I also want to say at the end here too, thank Dr. Alberto Rodriguez for setting this up and recording and helping us and assisting us with this podcast.
Yeah, and the Institute has got this top-notch, studio for this. This is, I'm having a blast. This is really cool. It's
wonderful. So thanks again, and take care, Gabe.
Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Have a great rest of the day and guess rest of the week.
Yeah, as well. Stay out of the heat.
Tell Alex I say hey.
I will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I think that's a wrap.
I think that is a wrap. That went really well. That was really interesting too.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're done.
All right. Take care, everyone.